So let's just start with, I think, what is probably one of the bigger films to come out to streaming this year. It is released by Higher Ground, which is Barack Obama's production company. It stars Coleman Domingo. It is a film that had some Oscar buzz, although as the weeks have gone on, it seems that it's largely fallen off. And it is a film called Rustin, which follows the individual with the last name Rustin. Apologies, I forget his actual first name, but he is this figure during the civil rights movement. He's friends with MLK. He is this black leader who's also gay, and he's fighting for civil rights. He organizes the March on Washington. But of course, during that time, being black and being gay is like the absolute sin of this country. That is not going to get you anywhere. And that's what this film is exploring, kind of how Rustin is largely forgotten in American history, why he doesn't have the same acclaim or discussion that maybe MLK has for the March on Washington and his role in all of this. I found this movie interesting because I didn't know anything about this individual of Rustin. And I should just state, I studied 20th American history in college. Like, this was my time period of focus, specifically civil rights. Like, I took a lot of African American history classes, and I remember the name Rustin being discussed in them, but he was never a key figure that we talked about in class. So this was an interesting experience going into this movie and not really knowing what it is. And the fact of this movie is Coleman Domingo gives a pretty knockout performance in the titular role. He is extremely good as Rustin in this movie. Coleman Domingo is a very talented actor, so it should come as no surprise. But this film is a powerhouse performance for him, and it's centered around that idea. Now, the issue is everything else of this movie is kind of hit and miss. There are aspects of this movie that I can recommend. The relationship between Rustin and MLK is fascinating to watch, to see as their friendship evolves. Obviously, MLK being of a South Baptist minister at the time, being someone who has kind of the authority of a church behind him and speaking as a Christian leader fighting against the civil rights, and obviously the confusion of church and LGBTQ rights as they don't see eye to eye. That is one of the big focuses in on this movie, is MLK and Rustin kind of just having to learn how to coexist together, how to be friends, because they are friends throughout it, but MLK is struggling with how much he can and cannot have Rustin involved. So there's some really heartbreaking moments between these two friends. There are other aspects of Rustin that I think don't work as well, specifically Rustin in his relationship to other black groups. The NAACP is in this movie, and it's all these groups that are in this movie that march on Washington in 1963, I believe is the year. And you feel the relationship between MLK and Rustin. The other ones are kind of dispository in this movie in the sense that, like, they're there. And I realize I should have said the word disposable in this movie. I don't even know if dispository is a word, but here we are, and I'm not going to edit that. We are in this movie and we see just like all these other characters and figures, and we don't really pay much attention to them. And thus, it makes the film feel a bit surface level. So, this is a film that works because Coleman Domingo is so good, but everything around it is just a bit too average to really say you need to go out and see this film with any real urgency. See this film because of Coleman Domingo. Everything else about this film is fine to very forgettable. I should just mention Chris Rock is also in this movie, and he's not very good in this movie. It's actually a pretty distractingly bad performance from Chris Rock. So check out Rustin for Coleman Domingo. I can't really say there's any other reason to check out this movie. If you're interested in the awards race and the Oscars, then I certainly think there's a lot to enjoy about it. If you really don't care, there's films with similar topics and similar documentaries that just do this story far more justice than Rustin achieves. I'm giving Rustin 2 out of 5 stars.